高高上线. While the presidential election draws very close, today me and Professor Yan trying to use English to explain some important issues related to this campaign to let our foreign friends understand what's going on and also can make your own choice in mind. You might not be vote for them, but you know which candidate that is your ideal candidate. We talk about the difference between Tsai and Han, the ruling Tsai and the opposition Han. I use these two terms to differentiate their position. And Tsai and Han also spot over the mainland China policy, okay, which we call 1992's consensus, straight consensus. In Chinese, 一中92共识，一中各表。DPP denied there was a consensus in 1992, but KMT for last 30 years, 1992 consensus is their mainland China policies guideline. China, of course, has their own political position. They wish someone being elected, so cross-strait relation, can be can improve better. I'm not saying who, but you can guess who is the ideal person being elected as Taiwan's next president. But people were arguing how strong is China's influence over this coming election. We know that in November, early November, that China has issued 26 initiatives which will attract Taiwan's businessmen, Taiwan's youth, and Taiwan's residents to go to China, to reside there, to do business there, to go to university there, also to find a job there. There's a lot of incentives called 26 initiatives. That being considered by DPP is trying to influence this presidential election in Taiwan. And also recently, China's military ship passed over Taiwan Strait. That being considered as a threat, military threat, to threat Taiwan's residents. That you have to be careful on your balloting, on your voting. So China have their position on Taiwan's internal election, but they're trying to avoid very obvious influence force, over Taiwan's election. I will ask Professor Yan, what else that China can influence Taiwan's voters' behavior? The last minute, will China be the most important factor to decide which party, which candidate they're going to put their seal on?
First of all, let me go back to 1992 consensus. And the most interesting thing about the 1992 consensus is actually this was an initiative from Taiwan explaining what happened about one China, different interpretation, and saying, yes, it is not written down, but it is verbally agreed that we will have a different interpretation of one China. So both sides can continue to negotiate, and it was coined later after few years of interactions and coined later by Suu Kyi as 1992 consensus, saying without this kind of verbal consensus, how can we continue to negotiate? So whether you agree, if you agree with the DPP, yes, it is not written down. But if you agree with the KMT, yes, it's verbally agreed. Okay, that's 19. But remember one thing. This is what we put it the four words together. 1992 92共识 consensus. And China in the 1990s actually first they refused to acknowledge this because they always insist one China principle. But after for a while, especially after 2008 when the KMT came back, and China has dropped the term one China, 一个中国92共识. They just mentioned 92 consensus. I thought this was good because the DPP opposed one China principle. So it's being simplified as 1992 consensus. It's much easier for the DPP. But DPP refused to negotiate with Mainland China under 1992 consensus. Then my question is, then if you're so good with this, can you come up with a better consensus? Or if you said the 1992 consensus was the consensus that the previous government, the KMT government, negotiate with the KMT, with the CCP, but we can have another consensus. We will first use this one to negotiate, but we can come up with a better consensus. And what the DPP did is they, I will use the word demonize the 1992 consensus. And then Beijing said, okay, you can get rid of 1992 consensus, then we will insist on one China principle. So I always ask my students, which one, do you feel more uncomfortable? Is it 1992 consensus or one China principle, right? The one China principle for a lot of people might not be acceptable, but 1992 consensus is pretty vague in a way. It is, it's almost like we call if you want to have negotiation, you have some kind of covering. 1992 consensus is the covering that under this you can negotiate. So that's 1992 consensus. But back to China influencing Taiwan. I think China did back in 2000 when Prime Minister or Premier Zhu Rongji called the Taiwanese people not to make a mistake, and we decided not to listen to him. So I have a lot of confidence in Taiwan's people making the decision themselves without being influenced. And we can find that in the past few months, I don't see a lot of pro-KMT or someone that, or attack of Tsai Ing-wen really from the social media that have been instructed by Beijing. We have a better judgment ourselves. As to the military, the aircraft carrier or the fighter jets circling around Taiwan. Okay, that might scare Taiwan not to vote for Beijing. So if they stop that, then is that another way of saying you are influencing the election in Taiwan? Because you usually do this exercise all the time, and suddenly you stop. Are you trying to appeal to Taiwan's voters? So no matter what Beijing does, I think it will be considered or interpreted as influence of Taiwan election. The 2060 initiative, of course, is one. And then if Beijing right now says, allowing more Taiwan's, businessmen to, encourage Taiwan businessmen to come back to Taiwan to vote, would that be also influencing Taiwan's election? I personally think Beijing doesn't know Taiwan politics very well. For example, they didn't know that the KMT would lose so bad in 2016. And they gave up on KMT, and then in 2018 election, and they never thought that Han Kuo-yu would have a chance, and the KMT came back. So they made a lot of wrong estimation or evaluation of Taiwan's politics, and I don't think they truly understand a lot, and they might have to come to observe our election more than the last few years, because the last few years they almost felt that the KMT would never come back to power, and they made a mistake. But now, if they think Han Kuo-yu is going to win the presidential election, they may also made a mistake. Who knows, right? But of course, they have their preferred candidate, but I don't think they feel they are capable of influencing Taiwan's election now.
Yeah, it just come to my mind. Those demonstrators on the streets of Hong Kong, they're still on the street, right? Even the Christmas Eve, they still have a lot of crowd. If China or Hong Kong government try to help KMT that they should not doing any suppressed behavior against those demonstrators for next 2 weeks until the January 11th pass. Because any physical suppression of those demonstrators will help DPP get elected. That was proved true. So China might instruct Hong Kong government, even if the demonstrators are very violent, be tolerant until January 11th pass.
Well, I think what happened in Hong Kong right now, the protesters are relentless. In the past, it's always weekend, right? But this past week, even during Christmas time, a lot of church actually support the protesters. But why are you organizing protests during Christmas Eve and Christmas Day? I think that's going to backfire. But at the same time, yes, Hong Kong government can make some kind of conciliatory move, but it's a cheat and chat right now. It's like if they make some reconciliation move, and then people will say, well, the government might not be so strong, and we can, put even further pressure on the government. And the same thing if the protester felt that they are not going to protest during the, let's say, the New Year's. But then Hong Kong government will consider that maybe this movement lost some kind of momentum. So I think they will continue, and it will help the DPP. But I think after a while, it's difficult to continue to play the game because it's not going to be like the occupation of all the university campus anymore. So if it's not the university campus, it's not going to be as relevant to the young people in Taiwan.
Yeah, the shock will gradually lessen than before. Okay, this comes to the very critical issue regarding mainland China and their reaction. There's always some scholar professors predict, writing articles on newspaper, that if Tsai Ing-wen or DPP get re-elected again, there will be some like an earthquake type catastrophe for Taiwan. The term in Chinese is 地动山摇. The 地动山摇 can be any type. I didn't imply that there will be a military attack from China, and I don't think China will immediately take military action against Taiwan, even if Tsai Ing-wen get landslide re-election. But those kind of warning, 地动山摇 or earthquake or catastrophic effect result, was this the right way or correct way to tell during the campaign season?
No, I think they would not do anything now. But we all learned, in the past few years that China kept raising up the issues of two centennial. 2021 is the centennial of the Communist Party. Yeah, of the Communist Party. 2049 is the centennial of the PRC, People's Republic of China. So they said a unification should be achieved between the two centennial. Now, if Tsai got re-elected, her second term, of course, is the beginning of the first, after 2021, you will be, be entering the period of the two centennial. And I think it depends on how the election result has been interpreted, is interpreted. If it is a smaller margin of the DPP in terms of presidential election and they lost seats in the legislative yuan, when the KMT is considered not dead and still have opportunity to come back to power, I think the CCP, the Communist Party in Beijing, will slow down the process of putting pressure on Taiwan because they believe there might be opportunity for KMT to come back. But if the KMT being routed, they lost, they didn't gain enough seats in the legislative yuan, and then the Communist Party might think, President Xi might think, it's over. Taiwan will never turn back, and then the only option is a military option or a hardline option, just like you said. Not necessarily military, maybe economic sanction. But we will face a much difficult situation if Tsai got re-elected and then felt emboldened, especially that she would take not maintaining the status quo, but more pro-independence route because she doesn't worry about getting re-elected again. That will be dangerous to Taiwan, and I think Beijing will decide, what will be the next move depending on the vote result.
Yeah, what the U.S. policy towards Taiwan, both sides of Taiwan Strait, is no unilateral action, which will sabotage the peaceful being, or take any counter action, to change the equilibrium, between the Taiwan Strait. And now DPP is trying very hard to get a new law passed by the end of 2019, which is only a few days away. That's called the Anti-Infiltration Act. Well, the purpose, I think, is aiming at the other side of the strait. Although they put foreign force, which foreign force we understand. But the Anti-Infiltration Act has never been deliberated long enough in 立法院, Legislative Yuan. And now they, with their majority member in the legislature, DPP trying to get this law passed by 31st of December 2019. Do you think this is a counter action?
Well, I think, even though I talked to some DPP members of the Legislative Yuan, they felt that this actually will hurt the election, the campaign. But why? Because maybe some people observe might be under pressure from the United States. I always felt that, yes, United States, to Taiwan is almost we call the security guarantor, guaranteeing Taiwan's security in terms of if we do not unilaterally change the status quo, but being attacked by Beijing, and then I think the United States probably will be committed to help Taiwan. So security guarantor, United States. But we also have our biggest trade partner in mainland China. So the KMT policy of at least have peace with mainland China, have friendship with Japan, and then also pro-United States. I think that's a much better and stable foreign policy initiative than the DPP one-sided pro-United States and with an anti-Chinese sentiment. So if you follow the United States, especially right now with President Trump, who is using the English word they call mercurial, like a mercury up and down going. So you never know, you cannot trust him. And he said his unpredictability is his asset. So we don't know, right now, like he is going to meet with Xi Jinping to sign the trade deal. And if they are meeting, and who knows, he might come up with something that might betray Taiwan. So I don't think we should put all the eggs in one basket. And yes, you might have this infiltration act that might please some hardline Americans. But if Trump decides to do something else, who knows?
Taiwan's election day is coming pretty soon. Today, that Professor Yan and me, myself, that touched all the important factors which will influence the result of this election. Hope will help you, our foreign friend, to understand a little bit more about 1920 Taiwan's presidential election. Thank you for watching.